Hello and welcome everyone to our special focus 100-pounder meeting of Overeaters Anonymous. Our speaker today is Vanessa G, and she hails from New Mexico. Vanessa's first OA meeting was in October 1986, and she returned in August of 1990, with differing periods of recovery since. Gillian maintains a 150-pound weight loss and has been abstinent since the 16th of February 2022. So, Vanessa, we'd love to hear your story.
Thank you. Thank you, Noel. Would you give me a 10-minute warning before? Okay, the timer will do that. Okay, thank you, Carmel. Hi, everybody. My name is Vanessa, and I am a compulsive overeater in New Mexico, which is part of the United States. I'm on WhatsApp, and my phone number is in the chat if anybody wants to contact me from the UK. I feel really honored to be at this meeting. It is a privilege to be able to share my story. And it's also a privilege to be able to connect with people all over the world. There's a prayer that I say every morning right after I do my reading, and I'd like to sort of center myself with that first before I start my share. Please bear with me for a moment. Dear God, this morning I give you all that I am and all that I will be. Please open all of me to your love, to allow your love to heal my wounds, and to allow your love to flow through me and from me to those around me. May your love for me become the love I feel for myself and towards others in my life. May I do thy will always. Amen. So, I guess I should start with the family that I was born into. I come by my addictions honestly. I didn't ask for them, but they run in the family. I had an auntie who died in her bed after many years of living in a bedroom, probably at 500 pounds. And she was young, probably about my age. And I still remember her funeral being carried, or her pallbearers struggling with the oversized casket, and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I hope they never let that happen to me. But I never made that connection at that point between that auntie and myself. The other thing, the other side of the family, and you'll hear about this in my story too. I hope it's not offensive to anybody, but it's part of my story. I'm also an alcoholic, and on the other side of my family, I had two uncles who passed away from alcoholism. And one of them, that same year that the auntie died, was pulled out of a motel where he had been drinking himself to death, dying of cirrhosis. And when I attended his funeral, he had an open casket, and I remember his belly being so swollen from the cirrhosis that it was touching the top of the casket. Neither one of these people, quote unquote, fit in their caskets when they passed away or when they were buried. And I think that would have been my fate if I hadn't found the 12 steps and the programs of Alcoholics Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous. So I was born into a family that I don't think that moderating food was ever a concept that occurred in my family. My father was a product of the Depression, and he had spent many days as a young man or a young boy starving, basically. He talked once in a while, he would talk about, when he was a kid, they would have one tortilla for the family of 10, and they'd make soup out of it for the night. And I can imagine that type of hunger probably, created a antipathy in him to ever moderating food for his family. So we never, in my family, what we did was is we ate as much as we wanted, and then there was always the diets. So it was always overeating and then restricting. My father was a fireman, and he'd have a physical every couple of years, and a few months before his physical, he'd start dieting. He'd lose all his weight, pass his physical, and then put his weight back on. And that's what I learned throughout throughout my younger years and growing up in my family is you eat as much as you want and then diet. The dieting didn't come to me until I became a teenager, and I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of photos at this point. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, so this is my family. My mother was a normal weighted woman, and as you can see, three of my sisters were too. My father and I were overweight. I guess you can tell which one of which one of the daughters is the compulsive overeater or the alcoholic, and I just always felt a little bit different. Everybody else in their nice little skirts and tiny little girls, and then there was me. I wasn't morbidly obese, I don't think necessarily at that point. But I I definitely felt really heavy. And let me see if I can get in here to my notes, and I'll show you another photo from back then. I don't know if you saw that, but in any case, when I got to high school is when I started dieting, and I lost weight, and I actually got a little bit of a male attention, but I was extremely shy when I was young, and didn't respond to it at all. Got out of high school, overweight but not obese, and went to college. And most people talk about the freshman 15 when you go to college. I think for me, it was the freshman 50. And I kept going throughout my 20s. By the time I was 26 years old, I weighed over 300 pounds. And I don't have a picture of that period of time. I had a flood in my garage, and a lot of my photos got destroyed. But in addition to that, I was always extremely camera shy when I was bigger. And so I did have one photo when I started a diet one time at my, over 300 pounds. I think I got up to just over 310, maybe 311 or 312 by the time that I was 26 years old. Let me back up just a little bit. When my aunt and my uncle passed away that year, it was 1976, and I was 17 years old. I'm an old woman, but 17 years old in 1976. And that same year that both of them died, I also adamantly and in my head, very logically, began to deny the existence of quote unquote God. I became an atheist. And I lived that way for a dozen years. And anyway, during that period of time, my eating just went out of control. I was progressing at work. I was um, getting promoted. I ended up with, quote unquote, a government job, a career government job, and I got promoted back up to the big city, which was Albuquerque here in New Mexico. And when I showed up there, I was already over 300 pounds, but I owned a house, I owned a car, I had this career job, and I thought, I had everything under control except for my weight. And one of my friends who unfortunately died of this disease in her early 50s came up to me at work shortly after I showed up, and she asked me if I would go to an OA meeting with her. She hadn't ever been, but somebody had suggested it to her, and I didn't want to look like I didn't want to do anything about my weight. So I said, sure, I'll go to an OA meeting. This was in August or whatever of October. It would have been October of 1986. And I still remember that meeting. I walked in and there were quite a few people in the room, and there was a woman just like this meeting telling her story. And she talked about how she worked for a grocery store. She dropped a big jar of maraschino cherries on the ground in the grocery store. It shattered, and she got down on her hands and knees and she ate the cherries and sucked up the syrup. And I remember being horrified, just horrified. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I've never done anything like that. And then the other thing that happened was everybody in the room, or we went around the room and plenty of people shared, and they shared, openly and honestly. And I remember walking out of that meeting and thinking to myself, these people are absolutely crazy. They don't know what, this isn't me. I don't belong here. And so I decided that my problem is just that I had never dieted seriously. So I signed up for one of those liquid protein fasts. And I remember they weighed me in, and my weight was 311 pounds. And I started drinking 500 calories of liquid protein a day in order to lose weight. And it came off very quickly. However, my alcoholism rose up and took over my life. And even though they had told me I could suffer pancreatitis and die if I drank alcohol while I was on this diet, I started drinking alcohol. And it was an amazing experience to to have that type of a high. I didn't have anything in my system food-wise. And so here I was smoking away the healthy cigarette, ultralights, Marlboro ultralights all the time, like almost chain smoking, and drinking 500 calories of liquid protein a day, and then still pretty much going out and partying and having, binge drinking. And after 3 years, I burned my life down to the ground, and I ended up in an AA meeting. When I got to AA, I almost immediately figured out that if I wanted to recover, I needed to find a power greater than myself. And I started doing what other people were doing, even though I didn't believe in God. And I started praying. And I had been such an adamant atheist, and I was really proud of that fact. I still remember the night that I came home from an AA meeting and decided to try to say a prayer. And I covered up my head, and the lights were all out. I lived by myself. I don't know who I thought was going to hear me. And the only prayer I could remember is, "Now I lay me down to sleep." And that's what I said underneath those covers. And I've heard later, including one of the speakers on the Joe and Charlie tapes, say that they had started that way too. There's many people, I guess, that that's the only prayer they can remember. in any case, it was a start. And shortly after that, I found a sponsor. She was a great sponsor. I got a lot of recovery just right out of the book. And I went through the steps and came out the other side. And a lot of, well, I was transformed. I really was. I was the normal weight at that point. I had come, I lost a few pounds when I got sober, just because I wasn't drinking any longer. But once I started working the steps and got on the other side of the steps, I wasn't binge eating any longer either. And but I found myself coming home and having a snack before, as soon as I got home from work. And that snack was, a flour tortilla with some honey on it, heated up in the microwave. And as soon as I ate that thing, I would pass out. And so, with this idea of the 12 steps in addiction and I guess the allergy of the body, I knew I had a problem with food. And I called my AA sponsor and I told her, I think I need to go to Overeaters Anonymous. I've got to go back over there because I have an issue with food. But I wasn't binge eating. I wasn't compulsive overeating. And I think it's because I had, that spiritual awakening in Alcoholics Anonymous. And she told me to wait until I had a year of sobriety and to concentrate on my sobriety until I went to OA. Well, I didn't listen to her. By the time I was 9 months sober, I went to my first OA meeting. And I got what I thought was abstinent at that point. 3 meals a day, nothing in between. Now, I was eating whatever I wanted during that period of time. I had no clue that there was something called alcoholic foods. I'd often have pancakes for dinner. I have birthday cake at AA meetings. As long as it was within my allotted food time, and I lived that way for maybe about 2 years, and I had a fantastic period of time. And let me see if I can share a photo from then, that period of time. So I was a size 5 during that period of time, and very happy. I was really happy, and that was a great period of time in my life until one day at an AA meeting, I decided that I could have birthday cake for lunch, and all hell broke loose. And as time went on, I started, immediately I went into a huge relapse. That night at a dinner party that my sister was throwing, I was helping clean up the table, and every plate that I picked up from the table and took into the kitchen, I gobbled everybody else's leftovers down. I found every bit of candy that she had in her house and ate it. I just was full blown back into binge eating. And that was after a couple of years. And I became really unhappy during that period of time. Even though I was working a very rigorous program in Alcoholics Anonymous and attending regular OA meetings, it was a fight all the time. And I don't know why I never heard in my local meetings the same message that I heard in my local OA meetings, the same message that I heard in my local AA meetings, but I didn't. My fellows were in OA, were pretty much struggling along with me. And by the time I was 6 years sober, I had probably just, had, I don't know, relapse after relapse. I'd get a few days of abstinence. I get a few weeks of abstinence, sometimes a few months after the initial 2 years, but it just kept eluding me. And so at 6.5 years sober, I remember being completely and totally depressed. I was suicidal. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be so inflamed. I'd have so much inflammation from all the sugar that I was eating that I would barely be able to walk to the shower. And when I'd get in the shower, and it would take me a little while to get moving, and I'd get to work. I'd go to work. I'd go to an AA meeting. I'd come on the way home. I'd stop
10
at the
minutes left, Vanessa.
Thank you. I'd stop at the convenience store and end up just full of sugary stuff to kind of take home with me and just pound it until I fell asleep. And I wanted to die. So I put myself into outpatient treatment and took a sabbatical from work and recovered for a few more years. And then it started happening again. Again, I still didn't have this idea of alcoholic foods. And it wasn't until I finally got over 300 pounds again. Let's see if I can share that with you. Because I had to go to my sister and see if I could do you have that photo, Tina? The large photo? To find this photo. Okay. Is it up? Well, in any case, I got all the way up to 360 pounds. Okay, here we go. You can see this photo if I pull it out. I'm down in the left-hand corner. I mean, in the left-hand corner. That's me in a 5X. And I found that photo in some wedding photos that my sister had. And then the two bottom photos, this is me today after losing 150 pounds. And I just wanted to show you the happiness on my face at the bottom with another fellow in this program. We can take those down now. So I just struggled over and over and over again. And medically, I was having a lot of issues. I ended up with cancer as a result of my obesity. I ended up with 2 bad knees as a result of my obesity, and I ended up with a surgical hernia as a result of my obesity. And the doctors were trying to get me to do bariatric surgery, weight loss surgery to get better. And so I actually started that program because I had pretty much given up on getting a recovery in OA at that point, permanent recovery in OA. And I started losing weight again once I had all this, a food plan and people supporting me, nutritionists and OA sponsors and therapists and blah, 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 blah. And before you know it, I didn't qualify for the weight loss surgery. And then COVID hit. And within a year of COVID and the lockdown, I got up to 300 pounds again. And I was devastated. And I remember getting COVID at the end of that year and feeling like I couldn't breathe and that like I was going to die. And in fact, I knew I was dying. It was hard to breathe. I felt like I was dying. I mean, drowning in fat and drowning, from not being able to breathe with the COVID. And the phone rings. And it's a woman from across the country who I hadn't talked to for a decade. And she called for something totally unrelated, some Facebook scam or something. And she seemed to still have my phone number. I hadn't had her phone number for years. And during that conversation, she asked me how I was, and she was someone who I used to go to OA meetings with. We used to carry a meeting together. And I told her that I was dying. And I don't know why I told her the truth, but I did. And she told me to get on the phone and listen to this big book study that met every morning. And I had never considered actually going to a meeting outside of Albuquerque. I didn't think, telephone meetings, for one thing, were a big deal. But, I got on the phone and I heard all of these people with this fantastic, passionate study of the big book and recovery as a result of that. And it was a completely new world for me. It was everything that I had had in my other program, and it allowed me to get sober in my other program. And here it was in OA. And they talked about entire abstinence, and they talked about alcoholic foods. And these were pieces that were missing in my recovery prior to this. And so you couldn't have pried me out of there with a crowbar. I listened every morning, even though it was 5 a.m. in New Mexico, to listen to that meeting. And I got a sponsor, and I worked through the steps, through the big book again. And I was just surrounded by all these people. And so what happened is over the next year, I got down to, I'm 150 pounds less than my highest weight at this point. My weight loss is kind of stalled because I've had 2 knee replacements, and I've been very, sedentary since that. I haven't been able to walk much, and I'm just now getting to the point where I'm starting to really exercise again. And hopefully that'll be, a new place in my recovery. But I'm going to, I'm thinking about, what's different this time than all those other times in OA. I think it's down to 3 things, and I just want to impart those to you. One is I'm surrounded now with people all over the world who are grateful and passionate for their recovery from compulsive overeating. They have found a way out of this disease, this progressive, permanent, and fatal disease. And I knew that I thought, I'd never, really have found that in other people, or other people like me that needed this program so badly, that were on the brink of death. The other thing that I was able to be given that I was missing before was this definition of entire abstinence for me. I can apply that to my alcoholic foods and my alcoholic ingredients, and that way quiet the cravings. And finally, I think the most important thing was I became a sponsor. I had never done that in OA, even when, quote unquote, I was abstinent, because I never really felt like I had the ability to give what I had away. And I find that is probably the most important thing in my life, bar none, is my ability to help other compulsive overeaters, particularly other compulsive eaters who suffer like I do, or suffer like I did. I'm going to close really quickly now with a little reading we were studying the spiritual experience in the big book right now, in that meeting that I go to in the morning. And I'm just going to read you something from the AA 12 and 12. It's page 106. It starts at the bottom. When a man or a woman has had a spiritual awakening, the most important meaning of it is that he has now become able to do, feel, and believe that which he could not do before on his unaided strength and resources alone. He has been granted a gift which amounts to a new state of consciousness and being. He has been set on a path which tells him he is really going somewhere, that life is not a dead end, not something to be endured or mastered. In a very real sense, he has been transformed because he has laid hold of a source of strength which in one way or another he had hitherto denied himself. He finds himself in possession of a degree of honesty, tolerance, unselfishness, peace of mind, and love of which he had thought himself quite incapable. What he has received is a free gift, and yet usually, at least in some small part, he has made himself ready to receive it. If you are new, if you are struggling, if you were in this meeting, you have already made yourself in some small part ready to receive the gift of spiritual awakening, the gift of transformation, the ability to put the food down and work the steps. Just stick here, stay with us, and it will happen for you too. That's probably the most important thing that that I did right in this program. I never left.
Vanessa.
I never left, and I kept coming back. Thank you so much for letting me share my story this morning, and I hope that someone got out of this. Thank you.